In this episode, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jordan Henley. Jordan came into the industry in 2022, where he led his door-to-door sales team as the #1 rookie in the office. The following year, he came back and doubled his production while being one of the driving forces that pushed his team to a Shield championship. The next year, he came back in 2024 and upped his production while partnering at the Shield marketing. This past summer in 2025, he led one of the highest performing teams in the Outlier organization. Not only has Jordan performed at an elite level on the doors, but he's also a leader that people look to when it's time to perform, when there are challenging times that somebody needs to be leaned on. And he's one of those guys that would do anything for somebody on his team. I hope you guys get as much out of tapping into the mind of this elite performer as I did. Well, first of all, I'm so pumped that you made the drive out here a little bit over an hour to get here, right? So
yeah,
thanks for making it out, man. But to dive straight into it, one of my favorite questions, I've asked a couple of guests, but just ask people to get to know a little bit more about them on a deeper level. Jordan, what's your story, man? What led to this moment here?
yeah. I mean, we were talking about it like a little bit earlier while we were smoking a cigar. Basically, like I grew up in Michigan. I moved around a lot when I was a kid. So I went to like probably more schools than I can count. Well, not more schools than I can count. I went to like 12 or 13 different schools.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I moved around a lot in Michigan, like growing up in Michigan. And when I got like a little bit older, got bigger into sports. So yeah, basically I was like pretty dedicated to football. Wasn't the best at it. Like if you search up my highlight reel, there is not much. But yeah, went big into like really fell in love with football. I settled down in high school. That was like the longest time I was at a school. So 7th grade, well, halfway through 7th grade, I moved to Richmond, which like anybody in Michigan, there's probably like 20,000 people who even know where that is.
What's that near?
It's like in between Port Huron and Detroit, like right where it's like the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
So
how many kids were in your graduating class?
My graduating class was I think the biggest class the school ever saw. It was 119 people in my graduating class.
Okay.
And before that, so I grew up around well, I moved around everywhere, but I grew up like south of Hall Road, and I mean, I lived in like the country before. Like I moved literally in like middle of Michigan, like up by Cadillac before.
Okay.
And then when I went back to like the city, when I found out in 7th grade I was moving to Richmond, it was like culture shock. Like I went from people where it was like I remember getting made fun of at school because I didn't have like Nikes or Jordans, and then I go to Richmond and it's like now I'm getting made fun for not having cowboy boots. So it's like to me that was crazy. But so I kind of went deeper into football. That was kind of like my safe space. And then in high school, my senior year, I got like a pretty bad concussion, and that like ended my sports career. And then
you said what year were you in at that time?
Senior, my senior year. Yeah, and then I went into like partying, drinking, smoking, that whole rabbit hole for like months, just trying to figure out like purpose and what I wanted to do with life. And then after that, like school counselors were coming through. They were like, hey, so what are you going to do when you graduate? Like, you got a few months left. And I was still like, bad taste in my mouth with football. I was partying, drinking. I was like, I don't care. And then I told them that I was like, I'm gonna have my own business. Like I see online, people are making money online. I see like all these success stories of people, they didn't go to college and they have their own business and they're successful. So I just kept saying, I'm gonna have my own business. I'm gonna have my own business. And then after my senior year, like a family friend of mine, he called me and he was like, hey, I'm opening up a shop at a mall in Michigan. I think that you should come work with me. I was like, yeah, it's awesome. Like I'm 100% in. And then he called me back and said, actually, you don't have the position. So I was, for real? Yeah. And it was supposed to be sales. So I was like, yeah, I saw mine. People are saying like sales leads to business. So learn sales. So I was like, awesome. And then 2 months goes by. I had no plan. I was literally like, I was a DoorDash driver.
Okay.
And then after that, I get a call back from him while I was moving out of Richmond, and I'm literally like moving truck, everything was at the house, and my cousin was like, "Hey, Noah wants to work with you. Like this other guy fell through. Can you take a call right now?" I was like, it's like almost 10 o'clock at night. I was like, "Yeah, 100%."
Okay. Yep.
And then I took the phone call with him, and then he was like, "Yeah, like when can you start?" I was like, "I can start next week. Like, let me know what I need to do." And then I didn't even know what I was selling. I didn't really care. I was like, "Yeah, sales, like let's go." But this is when I was selling the Israeli salts.
Hey, we have that in common, man.
Yeah.
We both did that a bit.
Yeah, so I did that for like probably a year and a half total. So
I mean, how'd it go?
I was my best month in commission was like 6 grand.
Okay.
So after I learned more about the pay structure of that business, I realized, I was like, oh wow, I'm getting 25%, and most of these guys are getting like 40 to 50%. I was like, all right, so I left a bad taste in my mouth. And then my girlfriend, she went to Grand Valley, and she her roommate was dating Andrew Cadnacci.
Okay.
And
That's how, wow.
Yeah.
Shout out Andrew.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So me and Andrew sit down, we're just talking about like college dorm, like, oh, what do you do? Like, what do you do? Oh, I'm in sales. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm in sales. And then he's like, yeah, bro, last year I made like 45 grand, and I just have the like rest of the year off. And I remember at the time, like my best month was 6K in commission, but at the time I was making like 2 grand, 40 plus hours a week, a month. And I was like, all right, well, this is interesting. Like this guy is working harder than me. I definitely think I'm, shout out to Andrew, but I definitely thought I was like smarter and more talented than Andrew. So I was like, but maybe that's ego, but
hey, every salesman's got to feel that.
Yeah,
gotta feel that way, man.
You have to look around and be like, okay, I could do what he did. And if you have ego, then you got to be like, all right, I could do what he did, but I could do it better.
Yeah.
So I had that thought, and then I was like, all right, like let's talk more about it. And then me and him, like we sat down, I met guys like Brent, Jack, and then what really did it for me is I was getting my insurance license at the time. And I remember I was talking to Jack. Jack was top 10 rookie. We're in the Wixom house. Basically, I remember specifically and Jack doesn't even like barely remember this, but we're there with guys like John Purdue and like some of the other like managers that came through and had success with EcoShield. We're at their house, and then he basically is like, I'm kind of having an ego around everybody. Like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do this. Like, I got my insurance license. Like, I think I'm going to do this. And then Jack just like sidebar comment while I'm saying that to the other, all the other first year sales reps. He's like, yeah, well, we've had guys in the insurance industry come through and door-to-doors chewed them up and spit them out. So we'll see if you can last, basically. And I remember I was like, all right, well, fuck you.
Sure.
And I was like, honestly, at that point, like that was like when I was like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna outsell Jack, and I'm gonna make this, like, all right, if he thinks that, then I'll just prove him wrong. And then I remember I went out that summer. And that's basically how I landed. But I went out that summer with Jack, and I saw him and Brent. They were the guys that looked like they were on like a different level. Like there was everybody else.
Yeah, he top 10 overall that year. Jack did, and then Brent crushed as well.
Yeah, and I just remember looking at like Jack and Brent, and I was like, all right, these are the guys that are like the real competitors in the room. Everybody else is just, unfortunately, everybody else was just filling a seat. And then that kind of like spiked my interest in my like competitive edge. And I was like, all right, I gotta, if Jack's this much better than me, I gotta get better. And then I just it took me a few months to like make that decision. I was going to go back into the insurance industry after my first summer. And about halfway through my first off season, I was like, all right, like I got to make more money. And then I was talking to Brent, like I was a foot and a half out the door. I was not going to come back and do EcoShield a second time. I was like, dude, door to door is hard. Like you're outside all day. Like this is not it's not for me. And then I'm talking to Brent. And I remember this is when he had the Rochester house. So I'm pacing around his house, just walking back and forth. And then he's like, I got to make more money. And then he goes, well, you got to learn more skills. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, right now you just know how to sell. If you learn how to recruit and you learn how to lead a team, you can make money like me. And Brent made over 300 grand that year. Like, he was the man. So I was like, okay, I got to learn more skills. Well, what skills do I need? He's like, dude, you got to learn how to recruit. You got to build a team, or you're going to be selling forever. And then that's when I'd say that was the moment that I actually like that's when I actually like committed to EcoShield was then. So that's kind of how I view like how I got into the business.
Okay, I love that, man. You have to become more valuable to earn more money, right? You have to learn additional skills, and you had some great leaders around you as well. When you got into your first summer, remind me, what did you do your first year, and then what did you jump to your second year?
I did 217K my first year.
Your rookie year, okay.
Yeah.
And then wait, so did you make more in your first year in 4 months than you made in the last 12 months? Was it about the same?
Oh yeah. My first year at like selling the skincare, I made 28,000. So like I was like, oh yeah, more than doubled my income. Like, that was huge success to me. I was making like, I had good cancels. I was making like, I made like, I think total 63, 64K. So I was like I was making 2,000 a week. I was making probably $1,500 a week. So from going from almost, $1,500 a month to, $1,500 a week, I was like, yeah, I made it.
Right, that's what we thought back then.
Yeah, like, dude, this is how sweet the fruit is. Like,
right. And so your first year, so you came out. That's a solid first year.
yeah, oh yeah.
And then your second year, what was your progression like to go from that place to, right? You led offices before. Now you're somebody that's top of the leaderboards. What was the learning process when Brent said you've got to learn more skills? What did you do in order to make that a reality?
So I remember at first what I started doing is I was really like, I was frugal, and I thought that being frugal was like cool. Like, I saw like the guys online, like the Dave Ramsey's, and like they all talk about like saving your money, and then you have like the other side of the spectrum, like the Robert Kiyosaki's and the Grant Cardones, who are like, debt's good, leverage debt, like use debt as an asset. And at first I was like, I was kind of being frugal, saving my money. And then I remember one of the big switches was Brent was like, look, bro, I go to Lifetime every morning with me, Tristan, and Dan and Hunter. Like, we all go there. We all have sales teams, and we're all managers. And at the time, like, I was paying like $30 a month for a gym membership. And I was like, okay, well, he's like, Brent goes, why don't you come with me? And then every day after we hit the gym, I'll recruit with you. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, how much is a Lifetime pass? He goes, it's $150 a month. And I was like, $150 a month, bro? That's my car insurance. Like, I'm not going to do that. And then he was like, okay, it was December at the time. He was like, okay, it's December right now. It's $150 a month. That's like, it was like 5 months, came out to like $800. He was like, if it comes out to $800 for you to be around the right people and be in the right environment to build a team, like, and that's the difference between you having a 7-figure sales team versus not, like, is it worth it? And I was like, okay, yeah, that's worth it. So I started going to the gym with him, and then every morning, like, we would basically hit the gym. We either go to like a Barnes and Nobles and read and send like social media recruiting, or he would take me in person. I was probably the worst in-person recruiter ever. I have a funny story about that, but
if you want to elaborate, what do you mean by that?
So the first time I go shoulder tapping, I go shoulder tapping with Jack and Brent. And shoulder tapping is basically like you just pitch somebody in person about coming to work with you. So I see Brent.
If you think they can do the job, you don't just pick random people.
Yeah.
All right.
So I saw Jack and Brent go up to some guy. We're at Somerset, and Jack walks up to some guy, starts talking about his shoes, and is like, hey man, like, you ever thought about doing sales? I was like, okay, I think I could do that. And then I see Brent go and talk to a guy, and Brent's like, oh man, you about to buy that shirt? And the guy looked at him like kind of funny. Like he was like, well, like, why is this guy saying this to me? And then Brent goes, hey, like it fit the conversation. He goes, hey man, I'm not gay, by the way. And the guy was like, yeah,
Sure, because it's a shirt. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the guy's reaction was like, oh, okay, like brings his guard down. And then Brent is like, hey, you ever thought about doing sales? So I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And I see a guy like across the mall. So I walk up to him. I'm like, first time you do anything, it's awkward, it's clunky.
Yeah, yeah.
So I walk up to him and I was like, all right, just take it slow. Like you'll be all right. And I see him, I'm like, hey man, I'm not gay, by the way. And he just looks at me. And I see Jack and Brendan looking toward my eye. They just start dying of laughter. And then I was like, yeah, I do sales. Like, you ever thought about it? And he was like, no, man, just get away from me. So then I just walked back down, like, you know, tail between my legs, head down. And I was like, and then they're dying of laughter, like aisle over. And then and then I was like, all right, it's another mountain I got to climb.
Absolutely love that, because so for some people, man, there's definitely some type of spectrum or range of people that some have more of a like natural proclivity to talking to people, and there's like that aspect. That's definitely the case. Some people are a little bit more socially talented when they come into a sales position, but it's so important that story is said, right? Because people look at you and like, dude, it's just you just know how to talk to people. You just close everybody. You've always been that way. That's just not the case, man. Like everybody starts out being terrible at the things that they're just starting out at. And there's actually a moment that lives in my mind going back now probably 10 years, like a full decade ago. And I remember this conversation. It was somebody that I looked up to a lot, wildly successful. I was sitting next to them at a dinner, and this was before I had attained any success myself. And I just asked him a question. I said, hey, what do you think is the biggest difference between people that aim for where you're at, and, don't ever get there, and the people like yourself who make it? He said, well, I can't speak for everybody, but one of the things that I'll do that I notice most people won't is I'll do something that I'm bad at, and I won't care that I'm bad at it. And I'll just keep doing it until I'm good at it. He said most people, first of all, won't start that because they're scared of it. And secondly, if they do start it, they get really like embarrassed, and they'll stop doing it before they ever get good. He said, so he's like, maybe I'm just, kind of goofy, and I'll just keep doing something until I figure it out. But he said that's probably maybe the biggest difference. And I like, that's 10 years ago. Still remember that. So absolutely love that. But anyway, jumping back from that, what were some of the other skills or some of the things that you focused on developing that led you here?
Well, at that point, I was like, okay, I started getting some momentum. I started, recruiting some guys. At the time, like I had around December time, it was actually, looking back at it, recruiting wasn't like recruiting isn't really that hard. It's just effort. Like, I think recruiting is, if you define easier as more people can do it without having a higher level of skill, then I would say recruiting is easier than sales. Like, I think the average person can recruit better than they could sell.
Sure.
So I at the time have about a month of trying.
But why is it harder? I agree that it's easier. Why do you think the average person is harder? Because you've heard this said before, where it's like, dude, people will go out for a season and talk to 10,000 people over the course of a summer so that they can make somewhere between $30,000 and $200,000. But then people around us do it a lot, but so few people in our industry will go out and talk to like 1,000 people over the course of the other 8-month period in order to actually develop wealth.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Although I would agree that I think recruiting is actually easier if it's just easier than selling.
Yeah. I think it was Cole Aronson who said this, or maybe it was Rob Nelson. It was one of the two, but they basically said what were they saying? It was on the call yesterday. They were talking about, they had a quote, but I think the quote summarizes it pretty easily. But I think the reason is because environment. Like, I think that over the summer, the reason it's so easy to produce, you're around, 50 to 100 other guys that are all committed to the same thing, growth and sales. And in the off season, you go back home. Some of these guys, instead of, moving out with some of the either their business partners or even some of their friends that have common goals, they go back to, their mom, their dad's house. And when you get back into an environment like that, you have habit triggers. So let's say, typically before the summer, for me, it was, I would, get on PlayStation and like probably rip a cart. And the next thing you know, there's 6 hours of time lost. And I don't even you don't even remember that. And it was so like habitual for me to do that. So for the first few months of the off season, it was like that flew by. And I wasn't even conscious of how much time I was wasting because of those habit triggers. They were just pulling it. Oh, this is what they were saying. They were saying become addicted to dopamine. Everybody is addicted to dopamine, and you have to make that dopamine addiction work for you. So at the time, my environment forced my habit of, hey, this is where you're going to get dopamine, weed and video games. Where when I moved out with guys like, Noah, Elijah, Stefan, where I got dopamine was, hey, if you lead these guys, you'll feel fulfilled at the end of the day. And leading is, showing these guys how to recruit and build a team and do that yourself. So I think it's because of environment. If you put a sick dog in a healthy pack, then you'll have a healthy pack. You put, a healthy dog in a sick pack, then you'll have a full pack of sick dogs. So I think environment's the main reason.
If I go back a second to when you're talking about spending, and like the way that you saw that $150 investment to go to Lifetime, or that $30 investment to go to the gym that you were going to, you're talking about like the contrast between Robert Kiyosaki and Dave Ramsey, and very different. Also, there's two different paradigms there. Dave Ramsey, I think, is great for W-2 employees and learning to live below your means. And I think there's a lot of good stuff that he says. It's just true. Like, live below your means. Save money, put it into index funds, mutual funds. That's awesome. However, to kind of re-emphasize that point, because I think it's one of the most important things, because you're breaking free of a mindset where, like, there's a risk involved when you enter into a job that there's not a ceiling at, like you're working this amount of hours, you're going to get this amount of money. Now, in that context, you should really be listening to Dave Ramsey and taking it seriously. You got to save money, man. You're going to be a slave forever. If you jump into an environment where, depending upon how much you invest into yourself, or you invest into the skill sets, the environment that you're in, all that, you have the ability, that ceiling just is like, it's an elevator. You can go up as high as you're willing to push yourself to go. Then it changes the paradigm entirely, right? And then it's so productive. Then you started hanging out with Brent. You started learning from him. Like, then you started to recruit and have somebody there with you. There's something that's an important part of my story years ago, where in order to learn what it was that like I wanted to start, like you mentioned, wanted to be a business owner, wanted to start this journey that was more than just one dimensional. And I was paying for an apartment in Chicago. And this is before I was making decent money as a salesman, that people would consider decent, but wasn't anything wild. And I had an apartment in Chicago that my wife and I were renting. And that lease we couldn't get out of until the beginning of the next summer. We had sublet somebody else's apartment. And then I realized we were there on an island, and I was doing something for the very first time that I had never seen done before. And so in order to learn that, I moved across the country with my wife. Shout out to my wife for like being a ride or die and doing that. Went down to Arizona, kept paying that lease when I didn't have like crazy money like that. And then I continued, like I started a new lease downtown Phoenix, and then I just was hanging out with people that had been doing this for years. So much expense was accumulated, but it was for a good cause, right? So there's good expenses, bad expenses. It doesn't mean like go spend your money on retarded things. You know? But if you're investing in yourself and into something where there's risk, and you need to become something to make sure that you achieve it, that is such a productive financial investment in those cases. So I love that that's part of your story. This paradigm shift there. Same thing you had to go through.
I feel like opportunity cost is miscalculated a lot by a lot of people, a lot of young guys. Like, oh, well, it's going to cost me, if I spend $1,000 a month in the off season, for my housing, like that's $8,000. If I put that in, if I save that, which most likely they're going to spend anyways, but if I save that, like this is what my life could look like. And yeah, like, your life could look like that, but what happens if you invest that in yourself or in your business, and what happens if that goes better than you could imagine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Dude, back before we had money, me and my wife went to a Tony Robbins conference. I think I spent like $15,000 on that conference. And it was 100% worth it for us to go to that conference together. So just echoing that over and over, that is so critical, investing, in yourself. All right. So going back to, I'd really like to talk about, Jordan, two primary things. One, first of all, your sales skill set, how that developed, how that came about, because you're one of the people that made a quantum leap, and you should talk on this topic. People should learn from you. What are some of the things, let's start here. What are some of the things that you learned these were the most critical pieces for you becoming one of those top performers? If I just ask you kind of a broad question like that, what did you learn in that sense that took you and elevated you up to the top?
Yeah, so for my first summer, I went from 217 to I think it was 421 in rev. So basically, I doubled my previous summer.
Phenomenal.
I think so what I came up with that summer. Well, actually, I'll start off with this. So the beginning of the summer, my best week before was 18,000 in revenue. Going into that first year as a manager. So you know how it is.
What'd you say your first was 18,000 in revenue?
My best week as a rookie was 18,000 in revenue.
Okay.
So I never even cracked 20K weeks. So I saw Jack and Brent, they were doing those like clockwork. I mean, Jack was averaging 25K a week. Mm-hmm. So the first week starts and I do 21,000 my first week. And I didn't, how the first week is, you got guys coming out, you got to knock with them. So you're not really working a full week. Mm-hmm. So I was like, dude, I maybe took a day and a half off with with dealing with rookies and all that. So I was like, dude, did 21K and I should be able to average 30K a week. And the next week I do 12K. And I didn't have any new rookies get in. That was the first week I worked the hardest that week that I ever did. And I come into the meeting. So in South Jersey, we had the warehouse, and that's where I was selling my second summer. So it's this warehouse with, two nice chairs in the front, and then you have all the folding chairs for the sales office around it. And it's Jack and Brent in the two nice chairs. And I'm walking back and forth in front of them where, we do like the actual meetings. And I'm just going off. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. Like I'm like just blaming everything. And then like, I remember Jack, he was like, yeah, bro, you gotta chill out. Like you're putting too much pressure on yourself. You gotta take a step back and just like allow it to like allow the sales to come to you. And I did stop putting so much pressure on myself, but I think what allowed me to like make the switch was there's two deliberate things I did that year. So my comparison circle changed. I was compared a lot to the other rookie that year, top rookie that year, Jackson. And Jackson, he's a beast. Like he's done over 300K multiple times, but rookie year, me and him, we sold just about the same. He stayed out later to knock postseason to sell 220. So he could say he sold more than me. So I remember going into that off season as I was like, all right, Jackson is not a worthy competitor. I'm better than him. Who is a worthy competitor for me? Jack or Brent? And early on that summer, Brent made the decision that he wasn't going to be leading the office. He didn't have to be the guy to lead from the front. But Jack, he was on a partnership run that year. He had like rookies doing, he had 3 top 10 rookies.
Yeah.
2 of them almost doing 400K. And I remember I was like, all right, Jack is a worthy competitor. So I only compared myself to Jack, not these other guys. And then I remember I was told, hey, can you make a training about price dropping? And I came up with like a 4-step process on how I price drop and how I spend my time with a customer. If I take a customer through all 4 steps of this process, if they don't end up buying, then I leave. And that process can take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes per house. But every time every interaction I got, it was either, is this person a yes? And the yeses, you sign up, doorstep close, like make it easy, don't complicate the process.
Mm-hmm.
The maybes, these are the people you take through the whole process. So these are the guys that you know, like front door close, backyard price drop close, and then I would typically do a second move, and then off of the second move, I would do an inspection. If they give me an objection after the second move, I do an inspection. I show them everything like that they have, and then I'll do a final Hail Mary price drop. And if they don't bite on that, I get name. I appreciate your time. I'm out of there, and I'm going to the next I'm going to the next house. So I'd say those were like the main the two things that really made me like flip the switch to hit to that next level.
I love that. I love that. I got to see your next level, what it's become. You know, recently you went 1-for-1 when I was watching you, man. And then the other guys are so crazy. I got to see that a couple times from guys, which obviously is not the way it goes all day, right? But I saw that process. You did the inspection, and it was a townhouse, and you did the inspection as well, which I absolutely love that. But the other thing that I noticed is you were saying that, you know, you're one of the people that your development has been, it's been easy to like predict based upon your behaviors. The reason that you're here for this podcast, the reason that you speak all the time, you're somebody that volunteers for stuff right away. Like, dude, I don't know if you realize this, like, you spoke like to the team, even though you're one of the, I mean, you're like a, not a junior partner anymore. You're like up there, but you were a junior partner when you were coming up, be like, hey, can I present? Like, when's the next time that I can present? And you were like, close me. I'm like, no, like, I'd love to do it. When is a good time? And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to like, you know, like a homeowner be like, okay, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about it. I'll give you a call. Yeah. And then you're like, or I can shoot you a text, but then you like text me right away. You're like, hey, when's the time? Same thing for this. I was like, hey, I'd love to get a couple of the high performing partners on. And then you texted me right away. You're like, hey, when's it available? So that's the action patterns, man. Like you might not be able to self-diagnose, or maybe you can, that part of the equation, but you just right away. It's not like you're gonna start something. You take action immediately, man. To a hyper extent, amongst performers, you do that to a high level. So very cool, man. Like just to give you accurate, like that's something I got to see from the outside. It's very, very awesome to see you track your development that way.
I think the main reason for that is identity. Like I think a lot of it is how I view myself, and because of how I view myself, like this is how I have to protect that identity. So I have to make others view me that way. And I view myself as one of the best leaders in the company, you know, right behind guys like Gaines or Mike or you or Ethan, Brent, Jack. Like I'm like, I could be just as good as any of those guys. And just seeing like how they operate, like there's so many things that, as even you as like a example, like there's so many things that I see you do and I'm like, all right, yep, I got to back pocket that. And
where does that come from, that strength of identity, Henley? And yeah, you can learn something from everybody. I highly recommend anybody that you see that's done something, like there's something that they do well. Oh yeah. And if you can like, you know, like what you're talking about, you can put that together. Like this guy does this well, this guy does this well, you know, then you put together a superhuman, right? Yeah. But where does this strength of identity internally originate? Where does it come from? What's the source?
I grew up in my family, we didn't have a lot of money. And I think not having a lot of money and going through that pain of like the pain of poverty, I was like, all right, I never want to feel this way again as a man. And there's a difference of the circumstances you go through as a boy and the circumstances you go through as a man. The stuff you go through as a boy, that is kind of worldly imposed. You can't choose those. But when you become a man, you get to choose the stuff you put yourself through. So I deliberately made the decision, okay, I will not be somebody who's poor. So that was like the first building block of my identity is, okay, I'm going to be somebody who's wealthy. And then it was like, then I had to like assess what does wealth look like. And for me, I saw wealth in America as entrepreneurship. And really it's wealth and decisions. Like you get to decide if you want to spend time with your family today, or if you want to go bust your ass and you want to grind and you want to make more money. But the cool thing is you put yourself in a position to where you can do either one of those at either will. So I would say just making the decision of what I wanted at a young age and having the courage to go after it. A lot of guys, like they'll think like, I want this. Like I see, okay, I'll see Jack make $500,000 in a summer. and they'll be like, wow, I want that. And then they'll see an opportunity that they have to take to, be that person, and they shy away from the contact. So like I think about it almost as like a best, I guess the best analogy is like a sports analogy. Like, when you're going in for a layup, are you going into the contact, putting a shoulder down, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna embrace this, or are you shying away and you're gonna let the defender, body you? And I view the defender as life. They're gonna defend you the goals, and you got to chase, and you got to go into that adversity. So I made the decision that I'm always going to be the guy that goes into the adversity for something that I care about.
Hmm. Yeah, man. Hey, let's go. Let's go. Get me fired up. Right. That's true. Right. Because that adversity, you either go towards it,
Yeah.
or it'll come find you. You don't get away from it, right? But
Yeah.
one you can take on your terms. The other one, it'll come find you on its terms, which is a lot less desirable, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that I want to jump into specifically to get your perspective is leadership. I'd say that you have an identity as a strong leader.
Mm-hmm.
People look to you for that. What have been some of the lessons that you've learned? Let's say maybe a time that you failed as a leader that led to you learning. Like what have been the stepping stones for you being somebody that people could model and end up, growing and developing?
Well, I think my first year as a manager and being a leader, I had the easiest person to model. Well, I shouldn't say the easiest, but I had one of the best leaders I've worked with to model, which was Jack. I saw Jack. He was, always spending time with like his guys, and he was always authentic. It wasn't like, I'm gonna go, yeah, I got to go run a team meeting, or I forgot what, like a team event. Like, it's not like you're forcing himself. Like he genuinely finds joy in it.
Yeah.
So for me, I was just like, okay, this is what Jack does. Jack is a great leader. Like, at first it was like the humility, which is something I struggled with, to admit that he's better than me, and be like, okay, how can I take a back seat? And, he's going up. How can I find a way to, squeeze into that rocket ship? And I just modeled what Jack did that first year. And that laid a great foundation for me on to carry into my third summer, which is when I hit partnership. But I'd say the main things that Jack modeled was like, always take care of your guys. He invested out of his personal money, most I've ever seen somebody do, into his team. And working the hours, Jack, I feel like everybody views Jack as, besides the fact that
he does the work 100%. He does the work.
Yeah, I was about to make a reference to him being a literal workhorse. Besides him being like as tall as a horse, like him being a literal just workhorse, like I feel like everybody views that identity on him. So I was like, all right.
There's not something that gains more respect. That's why everyone mentions him.
Yeah.
He does the work. Doesn't shy away from the work. Anybody that does that, you max out the respect. That's max aura right there.
Literally.
Or that's aura max right there.
But yeah, with he highlighted like how to take care of your guys, what working a full schedule looks like, because a lot of people, they think they're working a full schedule, but it's not. And then other than that, like I would say how he communicated around the team. Like one of the things that I would deal with is I would have like guys get into my car and immediately just right to bitching and complaining. And it's like, everybody's got something they can bitch about. But what I saw Jack immediately would always cut that off. And so I was like, okay, if Jack cuts it off, like he doesn't let any of that creep in, like what am I going to do to
How do you cut it off? How do you cut it off? I'm curious. Like, man, nobody's home in this neighborhood, dude. Everybody's gone. Nobody's home. Like, dude, that's the only reason I'm not selling is because nobody's home. This neighborhood's dead. I'm sick of this, man.
So it depends on like where that's at. So if that's like when you're like, you get a text about, hey, like I need to move area. Like what I saw Jack would do is he would just send a text back when somebody's saying that. Like he wouldn't answer his phone for something like that. He would just send a text back and be like, you're fine. Like it's good area. And he'd be across the street right next to him doing the same thing. But the thing is he'd be producing at the highest level. So he would basically shut that up with his results and his work. And then,
well, a big thing to jump in here as well. The only reason that works, and I've seen it firsthand from him and there's several leaders on the teams that earn the respect from their guys by doing this. He doesn't like cut off like this perfect little hood for himself, which first of all hood's good,
yeah.
But he proves that through action, and the best leaders prove that through action. because they'll be identical neighborhoods right next to each other. The home values are the same right next to each other. And when I went to Philadelphia, and was like, I was following him for a day. We had the camera there. I was looking around. I was like, this is like one of the poorest streets. We will not get just popping off. But if you take that from the guys, that nonsensical paradigm that has got to do with hood, you deprive your guys of that complete lie having any hold over them by knocking the same kind of foot as them, and that by producing at the highest level, like you're saying. So yeah.
And then like one thing that I saw that was what I struggled with the most was, you get a full car group, like you're picking all the boys up at the end of the night, and you're driving, you're doing your thing, maybe having a side conversation with whoever's in passenger seat, but in the back seat there's 3 other guys. They're having their own conversation, and for me it was always that was 3 other rookies right behind me. So they're immediately, oh, dude, this girl's being a bitch, or just immediately, or this dude, he was, being like, he was so mean to me. Let me tell you how mean he was. Or this girl, she was being such a bitch. Let me tell you how much of a bitch she was.
Right, dude. They're trauma bonding or whatever.
Oh yeah,
bro.
Trauma dumping or
like Rob Noah, he put a word to it. He's like, yeah, people love to like what he say? I don't know if. I don't know. He wouldn't say this. He wouldn't say like they're bitch bonding, like bitching and bonding. But they're like I think he said trauma bonding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, there's this sucks. Like you go to like any job where like 9 to 5 and they hate their job, and they go home and they hate their life. They're just all, boss sucks. See what they're wearing today? Look so stupid. You see, they're like, and they're like, and then just all sit there miserable together, dude.
Yeah. And like sorry,
I didn't mean to laugh about that. Sorry, I think it's such a stupid thing to do.
Yeah. I just couldn't imagine living my life that way, where like I get home and I'm like, oh man, Jared, you should get a load of what this guy had the balls to do this today. Like I couldn't live my life like that. And I was seeing like when Jack would see that, like he would immediately be like, hey, like cut that shit out. I don't want to hear it. Look into the back seat. And then if, they switch topic, all right, vibes are up. Like everybody's doing good. But if they are like, yeah, whatever, and then I keep bitching, he's like, all right, well, I guess it's full blast music for the rest of the ride home. Have fun trying to like communicate and bitch and moan over,
What guys come to understand as they evolve as a person, dude, you're not going to attract, like they ask the question, what comes first, like success or happiness? And the fallacy is that people think in large part from the outside looking in that first it's success and then happiness. But the vibration that you need to be on in order to attain success when you're in a personal kind of situation, whether it's sales or something that's person to person, you need to achieve that before you get there.
Yeah.
In order to get there. That was something that I remember completely being wrong about this growing up. Like I was misinformed. I believed it. I thought that when I get successful, I'll be happy. And this is just when like kid version of me. And then when I started to actually like dive into material, I remember discovering Tony Robbins and discovering voices online that like, top tier individuals, and making them my mentor. So I wasn't confined by my geographical location, and started through books and finding mentors by, through authors and through the people that they were quoting. And one of the biggest paradigm shifts I learned, I was like, I need to be what I'm aiming for. I need to be that now, like in order to get to where I'm going. And so that the guys that do like this, the I don't know if you're aware of this.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Keep a few.
Hey, stop saying negative things out loud. Like if you want to get to where you want to go, you can't be vibrating at like an antithesis kind of vibration, or such a contrasting vibration from all the successful people. Then they won't want to be around you. You're messing with the vibe, man. You gotta achieve that vibe first. And then you'll find yourself getting to where you want to go. I just want to hammer that home. I was so wrong about that growing up. I just had to be like, oh, I was wrong. Okay. And then switch that around.
What do you think, what do you think, sidebar, I feel like it's what you focus on is what determines that. Like if you're focusing on, like if, we're sitting here and all we're focusing on is how to get better, and like we're connecting in that way, then, you go over and this side of the room, there's all these other people, they're focusing on like ways to bitch and complain and
sure.
be a victim, then, they're going to get more of that.
Right. 100%. And the contrast comes from a position of gratitude, right? Like a
Mhm.
position of gratitude versus like the victimhood culture that's like I know that I grew up in, and like I know a lot of people do, like,
Yeah, same.
and to a certain like to a certain age, you're right. To a certain age, you're right. But then
Yeah.
you have to flip your whole perspective in order to let yourself grow once you become an adult. So yeah, dude, I remember that being really powerful, starting to be, and there's so many ways. I think I've touched on this before, like in a couple different ways, but there's so many different real things to be grateful for. And if you start to challenge your current, framework with just imposing gratitude paradigms on everything, that will make it so that you're showing joy naturally,
Yeah.
right? But you really have to challenge your perspectives of victimhood before you let yourself flow like in that state. So I won't go into, I know I've gone on a bunch of different podcasts about like gratitude, so I won't go in there. But all right, so the leadership aspects, okay, so things that helped you develop as a leader. So you had somebody to model, you
Yeah.
studied that person, and you didn't shy away from studying who was the best
Yeah.
around you. What other things would you say were contributing factors?
Well, two things. So one of the things that I saw, or one of the things I talked to Jack about was, I was like, hey man, how do you prepare? Like, what made you go from that jump from 300K to 500K from your first to second summer? And uh, like most people think, they're like, okay, I just need to read the manual one more time, or like I need to just practice my pitch more. And what Jack told me, which what I've seen most people who make those big jumps do, is they're on a ton of training calls with rookies and they're breaking down the pitch and teaching it to somebody else.
Mm.
So like imagine if I have a motor in front of me, and if I put it together, I'll have a decent understanding of how it works. But if I pass it to you and I say, hey, like I'm going to teach you how to do this, and you're going to have questions on each part of it, and I'm going to answer them all, I'm going to have a way deeper understanding on how that works than if I were to, just do it myself and put it together and then put it back in the box, compared to like teaching somebody else. And then I would also say, looking at like the people that you model, like everybody has a dark side. Like figure out what that dark side is of everybody and see it, and kind of pry and see what you don't want to model, see what stuff you want to avoid, because everybody makes mistakes. So if you see somebody and you're like, wow, this guy can walk on water, and he stumbles, then if you're doing everything that he does, then you're bound to stumble. So I would say look at the things that you want to be better than him at, and get feedback from somebody you trust and apply something different.
Love that. If you can learn from the mistakes of others, right?
Yeah,
It's a lot cheaper lessons to learn that way.
definitely.
What would you say your competitive nature is? Has it been that way since birth? Like, have you been that way, or did it develop at some point?
Um, I think it kind of developed as I was getting older. Like I think about, it's just this is kind of a sidebar, but it's just so crazy. Like growing up, like how people grow up now versus how, like, I feel like I kind of grew up at the perfect time where people were still like, all your friends are meeting up on bikes and you're still like,
Yeah.
you're going to the woods and you're, shooting airsoft guns or whatever. And like, I view it as like, I had some good friends growing up in like my neighborhood, and they were all, my brother's 2 years older than me. So they were all my brother's age. And my sister's 4 years older than me. And I'd be hanging out with the guys that are in her grade. And I would always be hanging out with like kids that were older than me. So I was always kind of like a step below. So I kind of had to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I started getting like, growing up, getting bigger, taller, then it was like, okay, well now the playing field's really level. Let's see what I can do then. So I'd say it's definitely something that I learned while I was in like adolescence.
That's being younger is a little cheat code, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a cheat code. If you're not, you can still dominate, but definitely a cheat code to make you competitive, I think.
Yeah.
Share that as well. So in sales, most people have a season where they would say things started to click.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I were to ask you, what was the thing that took you from good to elite? Are there any particular memories that you have that come to mind?
Well, I would say for each skill set, it's kind of different. Like me and my brother, we talk about this all the time. Like you'll have clicks just in life. And I feel like it's almost like levels of consciousness. Like in the Bible, it talks about how, in the Garden of Eden, like they were naked, then they bit the fruit, and like they became conscious, and then they realized they were standing there naked, and then they felt shame. And I feel like shame is like the precursor to consciousness. So if you like for me, like there was like I felt shame. I look at like the 200K I did as a rookie. I look at that as I didn't really read the manual too much. I was just in a lot of training calls and a lot of in-person training. So I had the pitch down and I worked hard, and I think that'll get you to 200K. My morning routine was terrible. Like my off the doors habits were not something you'd want to duplicate, but I think working the hours and having a decent pitch will get you to 200K. But one of the clicks I had from, 200 to 400 was like within that 4-step process is that I went from like high pressure to low pressure, high value. So
What do you mean by that?
so before I'd be trying to close people. Like I'm going to close this guy, and I would try and will them into a sale. And, like most people that have kids or that lead people, they realize like you can't will somebody into doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized if I can ask good questions and I can provide value to a person, and then I can minimize the risk that they have by reducing the price, then like they're more, and I can get them to like me, then they're more likely to buy. And through through basically getting to know them, like I think about Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, like become genuinely interested in somebody. If you're genuinely interested in, like, if I'm asking you, hey, how many kids do you have? What kind of car do you drive? Like, how long have you been here? Are you originally from this area? Well, now I get to know, like, hey, this guy's he's a business owner. He has multiple kids, and like, he's really busy and doesn't have time to do a lot of these little things. Well, then I can provide more value to him by hitting on like the things that'll actually tailor to his life. So like if somebody's got kids, I'll talk about how they don't have to worry about their kids getting bit or stung by something. If somebody is, never home, I'm like, dude, you're never home. You never have time to deal with this stuff. Like you don't want to have to come home and deal with, a bug problem. Or, whether your problem's bugs or whatever, like, you don't want to come home if you don't have time and spend your already valuable time doing something else. And then I just say getting to genuinely like understand why somebody is doing what they're doing, whether it's they're doing it themselves or they're, they have a company or they've never had a service before. You just got to get to understand them.
Understanding people and then helping them based off of that.
Yeah.
It's almost like sales really helps people.
Yeah.
That's what great salesmen understand and are working towards. Love that. All right, Henley. So everybody sees the highlight reel, right, of where you're at right now. But what was, maybe the largest internal battle that you fought and that you ended overcoming that led here?
Well, I feel like everybody to a degree battles with like imposter syndrome. But internal battle actually.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I feel like everybody to a degree battles with imposter syndrome. Like I feel like at any degree of success, if you're pretty conscious, you're going to look around and be like, okay, do I deserve this, or did I get lucky, or was this intentional? But I think about for me, like right before my second summer, my second summer was really where I had like that big jump where I felt like I really almost, ate it. But there was a moment where, so my mom, she has like a neurological disease, MS, and she got fired from her job because they found out about it in, I think it was maybe a week or two into my second summer.
Wow.
And I remember me and her, we made a deal about like, hey, I would help out with X amount of X amount of bills because I was living at the house at the time. And I remember I moved out, so that wasn't like, that was no longer going to be the arrangement. And I remember when I got that call, she was calling me, and I mean, you know how, especially, women in like disarray, she's calling me freaking out. And as she's basically like the world, I always say like the sky is falling for her. And I just remember making the conscious decision, like who's going to be there to pick up the pieces. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be the man that like my family, my team needs me to be. And there's no questions asked. Like, I'm just going to do the work. And when I made that decision, that was right after, shortly after I had that like experience where I was, at the meeting, like crashing out on Jack and Brent about like my production from my first week to the second week. And I remember like that conversation with my mom. I felt like that was when I was like, I don't care about the pressure, whatever comes with it. I'm gonna be the man that my family needs and deserves. And I feel like that was definitely a crossroads where I could have cowered and let the pressure of life, push me to wherever, or I could step up to the challenge, kind of shoulder into the contact and be like, you know what? Like, if anybody can do it, I can.
Hey, man, I love that, because situations like that, in everybody's unique way, the most challenging things in life, they'll hit us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the response to it, has to do with whether we grow into being what life is requiring of us, or like you mentioned, cowering away. So
Yeah.
I really respect that.
Yeah.
It's
Appreciate
awesome,
that.
Henley. This question is centered around pressure and performance. Okay, I wrote this one out, so I want to read this one to you.
Okay.
How do you personally handle pressure when your team is looking to you for results and the numbers aren't yet, what you want them to be? How do you handle those moments?
How I've handled them in the past is, first is like stoicism. Like, if everybody like if everybody is freaking out and you're in a room where everybody's freaking out, you're going to have that crossroads of, what do I do? Do I join in with them and be another person who's losing their shit? Or am I going to be calm, and am I going to take action, and like, am I going to look for a result? So I remember, this was in Shield, my third summer of the year I partnered. And I remember this was when I was working still at an office with Jack. And Jack, he was throwing down I think he threw up like 27K week. And I had a slower week. I only did like 18K. And he's coming into the manager meeting, and he's like, we only had like two guys in this room over 20K. Like, well, what the fuck's going on? And I remember I wasn't emotionally attached to, like, okay, I did 18, and like I wasn't emotionally attached to I sold X amount. Like, I was attached to the process. And I was like, okay, well, I know I grinded and I worked my ass off. And I know that, sometimes there's big weeks, there's lower weeks, and there's averages. Even if that was a below average week for me, like, I can still I can still be married to a process and not be attached to a result. So I would say, if you're committed to your process, then you shouldn't need to see the results. Like, the quote about like the man who loves walking versus the man who, loves a destination, who's going to walk further. So same thing with sales and life. Are you chasing a destination? Are you chasing a result? Are you chasing a lifestyle? Are you chasing actually changing your life? Or are you chasing, dopamine?
Yeah, love that. All right, so in the years you've been in the door-to-door sales industry, there's been a lot of evolution over those years. What do you think separates the old school grinders from, the new wave of high performers that have come in?
So I think one of the main transitions that I'm noticing is, I feel like everybody used to care more about like how much you sold, and it was like whoever had the highest number that was the most important thing. I feel like now what I'm starting to notice is, um, people care more about retention than big numbers, because if you're going to do something for a while, like, you realize retention is going to be the most important thing. So for us with Pest, can highlight a few guys in my mind's eye where I'm like, okay, this guy, he almost was cheating the system, and he was getting what looks like, great results, but like, my brain goes to like a Bible quote where it's like being basically like in the Bible, it talks about a plumb line. A plumb line is basically, it's a line dropped from something that's already level, and you build a foundation properly. So that's how you use a plumb line to make sure that something's level. So I look at guys who, like, they were built on a weak foundation. They didn't have proper morals or practices, and because of that, stuff crumbled when storms of life hit what they were building, versus somebody who maybe they're not going a million miles a minute with numbers or as flashy, but they have a good foundation, and they're slowly building and scaling something that's worth protecting, instead of something that they're just building for a number, and whatever happens, if it gets knocked down, they don't care because they're just there for a check. So I'd say that's honestly one of the biggest transitions I'm noticing in the industry is retention is becoming the number one factor, not just revenue.
I see that evolution as well. Yeah, I remember it used to be that was the case. There used to be like, how many accounts did you sell? Didn't matter about the quality of the accounts, just how many accounts did you sell? And now nobody even cares how many accounts you sell. It's like, hey, how much revenue did you bring in? And then secondarily, how much of that revenue are you going to retain?
Yeah.
Right. So there's like multiple steps to it. What's the quality of that? And then what's the retention of that? Completely different than the old school way of doing things.
Yeah. Like I see, what's his name? He out of Seattle. Like the Seattle guys,
they do a great job. Yeah.
Great job with retention. And that's something that, like, their teams always have good retention. Like, they don't have people with shady sales practices who are like, oh, I sold, X amount of hundreds of thousands. Like, it becomes something worth protecting. And that really comes down to culture.
Yeah. There's actually no like long-term game in a situation where you've got trash retention. Like, what's going to be there? Like, the whole point here at EcoShield is that you're building something that's not just this year, but it's every year going forward. And if your retention rate sucks, like, what are you gonna have here in 5 years out of everything that you just did this year? So that snowball really builds, and everybody ends up winning as a result of those customers being happy and having the expectations set properly.
Yeah. I would say not even like with just on the like sales and like sales and like account retention, like even in an organization, like when you look at managers and you look at even partners, like if somebody's partnered with somebody who has questionable ethics, then they're probably going to end up going somewhere else, or they're going to do something that crosses that line where they're not going to be in the industry for long.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, we observed some of that. So you're close to coming into your mid-20s now. All right. What would you say is the driving factor for you more than the money? Now, like, what's your mission or vision looking forward?
Yeah, before, like, I love cars. Like, me and my brother, like, we always, like, that was just something that we always like would connect on.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always that, and like I like real estate, so like nice houses, nice cars, like that was kind of like the thing that I was chasing. And then after my second summer, I really had like that was really like the turning point for me, is when I realized like if I wanted to, I could drive, I could go finance a Lamborghini or a McLaren or something, and I could lease a house that looks like I'm winning on the outside, but like really I have big payments, and like I could be really hurting financially. Right. So
going to bed scared every night trying to make your payments. Yeah.
I hope that doesn't get repoed or or like I hope I can pay rent. So at first I was like, oh, I could go get a Lamborghini, or I could go get a McLaren, or I could 8,000 square foot house. It's only 7,000-8,000 a month. Like I could swing that. Versus now it's more so about like, for number one, pleasing God and doing what I feel like my purpose is to help other people that are interested in business and just help elevate them up. But not only that, now it's like, now I'm starting to get to the age where I'm like, okay, family's becoming more important. What type of man do I want to be for my kids? Like, what type of man do I want to be for, like my spouse? And what type of, I'm not even married yet. Like I still have that that vision in my mind. Like looking back, like, do I want to be able to say like I took the easy way to like my son or to my daughter or even to God? Like I took the easy way out because it was more convenient, or I did the right thing even though it was more difficult, but it maybe even costed me more money. But that's not going to be the most important thing. It's, the most important thing is going to be keeping that moral compass true north.
Yeah, I have a question for you that more so jumps into, uh, I don't know if you call it like just leadership or just your. Well, let me just hit you with this question. So, what do you do in the times where you fall short of your ideals? Like, what is it that keeps you from spiraling when you make a mistake and getting back in line with your personal integrity? What do you do to make sure that one mistake doesn't become a domino of mistakes?
Yeah, I look at it. Well, there is, like you're saying with the dominoes, like there's little things like, hey, you get a phone call, one of your, one of the boys is, distressed about like, hey, one of my guys is thinking about quitting. Like, one of these accounts canceled because of the technician, or even like, hey, my cancels were like, my pay's going down because my cancels were higher than projected. And maybe you handle one of those situations wrong, and uh, at that point you're like, for me it's typically reflection. Like you have to look in the mirror and be like, all right, like I messed up. um, and then you have to like, and then I'll also start like, I'll ask myself like, all right, how big of a problem is this? If it's a big problem where it's like, yeah, this is going to be something that is going to have an effect that I'm going to feel for years, then I think about like process and action. Like what what would what would somebody who has the identity of a winner do? Like, okay, well, if if they just got knocked down, does a winner, stay down on the ground in the fetal position and they like feel sorry for themselves, or do they dust themselves off, call out, hey, that's my bad, I made a mistake, what can I do to fix it? And certain things, there's, certain times there's going to be certain things that you can't do anything to fix it. Like you got almost checkmated, you made a critical error. But if you can step up and change something, you got to do everything you can to change that, to prove like your loyalty and to prove like how much you care. And if that's not an option, then ask yourself like, okay, well, what can I learn from this scenario? Is this going to be a loss or is this going to be a lesson? And, and can I take it either way?
Love that. So if you look at the mentors or the influences that you've had in your life,
Mhm.
what is something that comes to mind, whether it's a person or a group or whatever it is, and what is one of the biggest lessons that you learned by observing somebody that you look up to in that mentorship role?
One of the biggest lessons I've learned is with people, switching, people getting poached by different industries, going different directions. Um, Back to what I was saying about building a solid foundation, like, true to plumb, like true to north. Like what is going to be the foundational building blocks of how you want to build an organization? And typically a lot of that comes down to morality, like what moral behaviors are tolerable versus intolerable. And for me, I know I've watched some great leaders make, like you with what you do with Outliers, like seeing you build that system. I've seen you make some phenomenal decisions about the characteristics that you want to highlight and the ones that you kind of want to like, that you want to reprimand. Um, and then I've seen, other guys in the organization, like maybe they did make a critical error, and that doesn't mean that they're a bad leader or a bad person, but it doesn't mean that I have to personally not learn, like just because I didn't commit you know, the fault or have that happen to my team doesn't mean I can't learn from it. So I would say just being honestly in the Outliers organization with the leaders that I'm around right now, like seeing the ones rise up and be like, okay, this is the playbook to succeed, and seeing the ones, seeing the guys rise or fall, like being like, okay, this is the actions that led to this decision, or sorry, this is the decisions that led to, this result. So am I going to make that decision personally and have to feel like the reward or the pain of either? Or am I going to basically learn from somebody else instead of having to go through it personally?
Yeah, hey, there's so many phenomenal leaders that we get to work with. Yeah, that set an example as far as things to model and duplicate. I love that because I feel like I've benefited from that the same way. And the yeah, dude, you can learn just as much what not to do by watching it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You can learn just as much what not to do. I feel like that's a big one you can take from your career. You can take that from you can learn from your childhood one way or another.
Oh yeah.
The parts of it that you absolutely love, the things that you, hey, this led to this. I can make sure that I'm go a different direction. So yeah, you're either learning what to do or you're learning what not to do. But either way, you can be an avid learner in any situation. So
Yeah.
love that. All right, let's put you in the position, the shoes here of somebody watching this on their phone, their computer. And let's say they're a young buck or a young girl, but they're 18, 19 years old. And they not only want to become somebody that can earn as a sales rep, but they want to go to another level. They want to be an entrepreneur. In our case, if they're this business, they want to be a partner. What true advice would you give them about what they need to be prepared for? Like, what will they go through? What should they focus on to develop? Like, if you'd give that individual advice as far as what's ahead of them and what to prepare for.
Yeah, I would say, well, it's funny that these two will kind of contradict themselves, but I would say have a plan about what's really important to you. Like for me, family is at the center. So like family's, the most important thing to me. And so have a plan that you can go years down the road. I honestly, I get made fun of by like my family members or some of my friends because I'll be like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Good question.
Yeah, and especially if like if you're saying you want to get into sales or get into business, where do you see yourself down the road? Like if what you're doing now takes you to a path that you don't want to be at, then why are you going down that path? And then basically like build a plan that will put you where you want to be, but also plan for everything that you just planned to go out the window. Like your plan is not going to, everything that you plan is not going to happen. Maybe a very few things will, but it's really just going to come down to like finding out what you truly want, what you truly value. Because if you're chasing something that you don't value, then you're wasting your time.
Yeah, definitely a lot of curveballs, bumps in the road. If you stay true, I tell guys like to add to that, we don't know the exact timeline, right? That you will achieve. You don't know the exact timeline that you're going to manifest what you see as far as what's really important for your future. But if you stay completely focused on the controllables and you do not quit, like you will get there. And some people we see get there really quickly. I mean, we've seen those and it's wild. Like guys like, Tristan partnering in 1 year after starting, and other people that have become phenomenal partners with huge amounts of accolades and teams and what they're earning now. There's some crazy bumps in the road, along the way. And the guy that you thought you could lean on, sometimes it's not going to be the case. And some guy that you're like, I'm not even sure this guy can finish the summer. They all of a sudden they're just workhorses that end up holding things up, and all of a sudden they become one of your partners. So, yeah, definitely expect the unexpected. Is some phenomenal advice there. Appreciate that. Hey, before we close things off here, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming in. Henley, it's always great to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Nobody better to smoke some cigars with, on this day. Shout out to, Veterans Day. Thank you for all the people that have served our country. I know we got quite a few people around us that do, whether it's people in our family or people that we work with. But I want to ask this question. Looking into this upcoming year, what is it that you want your focus to be? What are the things that your team should be focused on, understanding, hey, this is where we're headed. These are our core principles. Like, go ahead and if you talk to kind of the people that are watching this podcast and you're in a leadership position for them, what should they be anticipating this upcoming year? What are you and your team doing?
Yeah, I mean, the focus is going to be on elevating people that are already in a position to be successful, just doing everything that I can to give them the building blocks to build that foundation to get true success. So from a leadership perspective, like the guys that are, the rising stars, doing everything I can to put the blocks in place for them, and all they have to do is lay them. And then from like the personal production side, like you don't always, just because you're not in a position where you have to lead from the front, it doesn't mean you shouldn't, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be far from it. And at certain times, like especially if you have younger guys that are going to be stepping up, like I'm anticipating like there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be times where, those guys, they're going to be burnt out. They're going to need a break. And just knowing that I want them to make sure that they know like, hey, you have somebody that you can lean on. You don't always have to, to be that guy. I'll do everything I can to lift you up. But, if you ever need somebody to relieve some of that pressure, whether it's, sales production, whether it's helping, team building or, connecting with the guys, like I'm going to be that guy.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, we'll wrap it up right there, right in the dot where we planned on finishing up. But thank you guys for tuning in, and Henley, look forward to chatting with you again in the future. So till next time, see you guys.
See you guys.